So this is Saxon Course 2, Lesson 90, and we're going to be talking about solving equations with mixed number and negative coefficients. So the first thing you might be wondering is, what was a coefficient again? I don't know what that is. So a coefficient is a number that is multiplied by a variable. So in this problem, 4/5 is our coefficient. And because it's right next to the x, that means 4/5 times x. Okay, so you may recall from our past lessons that to isolate the variable, we have to divide by the number that's next to it, but we don't really want to divide by a fraction, so instead we're going to multiply by the reciprocal. That's right. And for those who don't remember, reciprocal is just flipping the fraction upside down so that when you multiply them together, they equal 1. And so x is now, it's 1x, but we're just going to write x. And then we're going to multiply times the reciprocal of the other side of our equation times the reciprocal as well. Because what we do to one side, we have to do to the other side. So this cancels out, leaves x by itself, and then we end up with 35/4. And 4 will go into 35 8 times with a remainder of 3/4. So our final answer for this problem is 8 3/4. So another problem. We're going to take it to the next step. We want to look at mixed numbers. And there's some good news about mixed numbers because you already know how to do this. The only difference for this one is that you have to change your mixed number to an improper fraction. Because remember, we don't multiply or divide with mixed numbers. Instead, we change them to improper fractions. So we're going to rewrite this problem. We're going to change 3 1/3 to an improper fraction. So 3 times 3 is 9, plus 1 is 10, so that's your numerator. And you leave your denominator the same. So really what you have here is 10/3 x equals 5. Now we're just going to do the same thing that we did for the fraction. We're going to multiply times the reciprocal on both sides of the equation. This is going to cancel out and leave the variable by itself, isolate it, and we're going to end up with 15/10. And you know we have to simplify this, so we can divide both the numerator and denominator by 5. And that gives us 3/2, which is 1 1/2. So 1 1/2 is our final answer. All right, so let's try this again. Take a minute, pause the video, and try this in your notes. Try it out. Let's see what you do. All right, so let's see what you came up with. First, you should have changed your mixed number into an improper fraction. So 1 times 8 is 8, plus 1 is 9. And you leave the denominator the same, so you have 9/8 x equals 36. Then we're going to multiply by the reciprocal. And we're going to do that to both sides of the equation. And this cancels out and isolates your x. And then I'm going to simplify this a little bit. I'm going to do 36 divided by 9, which is 4, and 9 divided by 9 is 1. So my final answer, x equals 32. Is that what you got? Good job. If you didn't, hopefully you saw where you made your mistake and you're ready to try the next one. All right, so pause the video and give this one a try. All right, let's see what you came up with. We have 3.5a equals 490. So 3.5a, we're going to change our 3.5 to a mixed number. So 3 times 2 is 6, plus 1 is 7. And we get 7/2 a equals 490. And we're going to multiply times the reciprocal. And I can see that 7 will go into 49, and so that means it will go into 490. 7 times 7 is 409, so 490 has a 0 on it. And then we end up with 7, so this cancels out. A equals 70 times 2, which is 140. And we could do 1 times 1, but we don't need to. A is 140. How'd you do? Excellent. All right, try this one. Pause the video. I hope that you saw that you had two mixed numbers on that. Oh, you're so good. All right, so both mixed numbers are going to change to improper fractions this time. So 2.5 is 2 times 2 is 4 plus 1 is 5. So we end up with 5 halves, y. And then we got to change 1 and 7/8 as well. So 1 times 8 is 8 plus 7 is 15. And so we end up with 15/8. Multiply times the reciprocal, the one that's next to your variable, okay? Don't get confused. You're always doing it to the one next to the variable. And then we're going to do the same thing to the other side. This cancels out and isolates your variable. And then we're going to simplify. 15 divided by 5 is 3, and 5 divided by 5 is 1. 2 divided by 2 is 1. 8 divided by 2 is 4. So we end up with 3 times 1 and 4 times 1. So our final answer is 3/4. How'd it go? You're so smart. All right, try this one on your own. Pause your video. All right, how'd you do? I know that you changed both of them into improper fractions because you're just a genius. All right, so we have 2 times 4 is 8, plus 3 is 11. And 6 times 5 is 30, plus 3 is 33. And then we're going to multiply times the reciprocal on this side. And then we're going to simplify. 11 divided by 11 is 1. 33 divided by 11 is 3. And then this cancels out, leaves w by itself. 3 times 4 is 12. 5 times 1 is 5, so we end up with 12/5, and we want to change that back to a mixed number. 5 will go into 12 2 times. 2 times 5 is 10. 12 minus 10 is 2. So 2 2/5 is our final answer. Good job. All right, try this one. All right, fantastic. All right, so again, change it into improper fractions. 2 times 3 is 6, plus 2 is 8. So 8/3 y. 1 times 5 is 5, plus 4 is 9. So 9/5. Multiply times your reciprocal. This cancels out, leaves us with y. And I don't see anything that I can cancel there. So 9 times 3 is 27. And 5 times 8 is 40. So your final answer is 27/40. I know, it kind of stopped me too. I'm like, shouldn't I cancel something? No. Didn't need to cancel anything on that one. 27/40, you can't reduce it. All right, so we talked about mixed numbers, coefficients. Now we're going to talk about negative number coefficients. And this isn't too different from what you already know, but the one thing I want you to know is we are trying for x always to be positive. So our goal is to make x positive. So on this one, we have a whole number, well, we have a negative whole number, so we have -3. And so we're going to divide by -3, because negative divided by a negative is a positive, and that leaves us with a +1, which means our x is positive. So that leaves x by itself, and we have to divide both sides by 3. Remember, what we do to one side, we have to do to the other side. So now we have 126 divided by -3. So our answer is going to be negative, because positive divided by a negative is a negative. Okay, so divide by 3. 3 will go into 12 4 times. Bring down our 6. 3 will go into 6 2 times. So our final answer is -42. Make sure you write this all in your notes. All right, let's try this one. You try this one on your own. Let's see how you do. Okay, so you should have divided both sides by -3. And that would have canceled this out, which would have isolated your x. And then we've got to do a positive divided by a negative. So our answer is going to be negative. And we're going to do 45/100 divided by 3. And if you want, you can have your 0 there. All right, so 3 will go into 4 one time. Bring down your 5. 3 will go into 15 5 times. 15 minus 15 is 0. So our final answer is 15 hundredths. You see how I wrote down all that work so I knew what you were doing and thinking as you went, and you made sure that you got the decimal in the right place. So make sure that you're showing your work on your homework and everything that you turn into me. All right, so this one is the same kind of thing except we have a fraction. So you're going to multiply times a negative reciprocal because we want that x to be positive. Go ahead and pause your video and try it. All right, let's see what you did. So we have negative 2/3 right here, and we're going to multiply times negative 3/2. That's the reciprocal. Notice negative times a negative, so we can have a positive x. We're going to do the same thing on this side, but this time we have a positive times a negative, which is a negative. So 4 times 3 is 12, and 5 times 2 is 10, which we can reduce, and it gives us a negative 6/5. And then we simplify. 5 will go into 6 one time, the remainder of 1 and 1/5. So our final answer is negative 1 and 1/5. All right, let's try this one. Go ahead and pause your video. Good. All right, so remember, negative times a negative is a positive, so we're going to multiply times a negative reciprocal. Do it to both sides. Okay, and so that cancels out and leaves m by itself. It's isolated. Then we're going to end up with negative 8 over 3 times 3, which is 9. So our final answer is negative 8/9, and you don't need to reduce any of that. All right, same kind of thing, except this time we can actually divide. So we can go ahead and pause the video and give it a try. Okay, so we're going to divide by a negative number on both sides. We're going to end up with x, and we're going to end up with a negative answer because a positive divided by a negative is a negative. So we have 24 hundredths divided by 5. 5 will go into 2 0 times. 0 times 5 is 5. Oh, excuse me. 0 times 5 is 0. Hello. And then, so that means we're going to go on into 24. 5 will go into 24 4 times. 4 times 5 is 20. Let's do it that way. And then I end up with a remainder of 4, and I don't want a fraction for my answer. I want a decimal, so I'm going to put a 0, bring down my 0. 5 will go into 40 8 times. 8 times 5 is 40. And that's my final answer. So negative 48 thousandths. All right, try another one. All right, let's see what you did. So we divided both sides by negative 10. All right, and that cancels out and isolates your y. And a negative divided by a negative is a positive. So we're doing 1 6/10 divided by 10. 10 will go into 16 one time. Gives us a remainder of 6. We're dealing with decimals, so we're going to bring down a 0. 10 will go into 6 times. So our final answer is positive 16 hundredths. All right. So, oh, I thought we were at the end. You still have another one. Go ahead and try it. Oh, hint. It's mixed numbers. Change them to improper fractions. Okay, go ahead. Pause the video. All right. Hopefully you remembered that without the hint, but just in case. All right. So we're going to still have a negative, but we're going to do 2 times 2 plus 1. So we end up with 5 halves, negative 5 halves, W. And 3 times 3 is 9 plus 1 is 10 equals. And so we're going to multiply both sides by the reciprocal, a negative 2/5 times negative 2/5. And that's going to cancel that out and leave W by itself. And then I'm going to simplify 10 and 5. So I'm going to get 2 times negative 2, which is going to give me negative 4 3/3. So negative 4/3, which is the same as negative 1 1/3. So negative 1 1/3 is my final answer. All right, so that's the end of the video. If you have any questions, make sure you ask me in the chat box, and give it a try. I think you're going to do great.